I'm Callie Williams with the Arkansas Historic Preservation Program. This month for our Sandwiching and History Tour, we are featuring a virtual tour of St. Joseph's Home, or St. Joseph Orphanage, in North Little Rock. We are excited to be able to showcase this important historic property as part of our virtual tour series. We have toured this property in the past, but this tour was suggested as a repeat by several members of the public who missed our previous tours. Luckily, we can now showcase this property as a virtual tour, presenting it to an even larger audience. I would like to thank everyone with St. Joseph Center of Arkansas Incorporated, in particular, Sandy DeCourcy and Susan Goodnull, who helped in researching this tour in 2011, as well as helping to facilitate our access to the property for the new virtual tour. Also, we want to highlight the contributions of Mr. Julius Greb, who has worked for St. Joseph since 1956 and continues to contribute to the care of the property today. John Baptist Morris was born in 1866 near Hendersonville, Tennessee. After studying at St. Mary's College in Lebanon, Kentucky, he decided to enter the priesthood. He studied in Rome and was ordained in 1892. In June of 1906, Morris was named coadjutor bishop for the Diocese of Little Rock, meaning that he would serve as an assistant bishop and later assume the full role of bishop after the current bishop's tenure. Little Rock's second Catholic bishop, Edward M. Fitzgerald, suffered a stroke in 1900 and spent the last 7 years of his life in St. Joseph's Hospital in Hot Springs. Bishop Fitzgerald died on February 21, 1907, and John Baptist Morris immediately became the third Catholic bishop of the Diocese of Little Rock, which included the entire state of Arkansas. When Bishop Fitzgerald died, he left the diocese with considerable financial reserves, and Bishop Morris quickly set out to use this money to expand Catholic institutions and social services. In addition to founding St. Joseph's Orphanage, Bishop Morris started the Catholic Little Rock College in 1908, St. John's Seminary in Little Rock in 1911, and St. Raphael's Orphanage in Pine Bluff in 1932, which was an orphanage for African American children. Under Bishop Morris's direction, in 1908, Mount St. Mary's Academy moved to a newly completed campus in Pulaski Heights from their previous location in downtown. Bishop Morris once said, quote, "No church can hope for permanent success or growth that does not actively identify itself with works of charity," end quote. And that is what he set out to do when he built St. Joseph's Home. He would continue to serve as bishop in Arkansas with the help of an auxiliary bishop after 1940 due to his advanced age. In 1907, the Catholic Diocese of Little Rock, under the direction of Bishop Morris, purchased 720 acres of land about 5 miles north of Argenta for an orphanage. The community of Argenta was annexed by the city of Little Rock in 1890 and became the 8th ward of the city. Eventually, the Argenta community would revert back to North Little Rock by 1917. Bishop Morris firmly believed that children should be raised in the country, and preferably on a farm, quote, in order to attain their greatest mental and physical development, end quote. In 1907, there were already a couple of wood-framed buildings on the land, and children were housed in them immediately. At the request of Bishop Morris, the Benedictine Order of St. Scholastica's convent at Shoal Creek near the city of Paris in Logan County, Arkansas, initially sent 3 nuns to administer the orphanage, which then housed 7 children. But the number of children and nuns increased, and they soon needed more space. In order to accommodate the growing institution, Bishop Morris commissioned well-known Little Rock architect Charles L. Thompson to design a new building for St. Joseph's Orphanage in 1908. The orphanage was named St. Joseph's after the biblical Joseph, who was the foster father of Jesus. The colonial revival-style building was completed in 1910 at a cost of $150,000. It featured a symmetrical facade, and the front entrance bay is crowned by a segmental arch and features cast stone pilasters and detailing. The brick building rests on a cut stone foundation and is topped by a red tile roof with a cupola. The 56,000 square foot building has 4 full floors with an attic and a partial basement. When it opened, this building had accommodations for 250 children. In May of 1910, there were 64 children, 5 elderly people, and 10 nuns living at St. Joseph's. Since its construction, the home also provided housing to a small number of displaced elderly people as well. Between 1910 and 1969, there were about 88 elderly people who lived at St. Joseph's Home. St. Joseph's Homes cared for both Catholic and Protestant children. The nuns also started a school for orphans and the children of neighboring families. The new purpose-built building had classrooms, dormitory rooms, playrooms, bathrooms, administrative offices, a cafeteria dining room, large kitchen, bakery, its own electric light plant, sewer system, wells and waterworks system, and laundry facilities. The interior chapel space was completed a few months after the rest of the building. In the chapel, the light fixtures are original. The organ was installed in 1962, and the stained glass windows in the chapel were installed between the 1920s and the 1940s as funding was available. Several of the stained glass windows in the chapel feature children. You see Jesus with the children, Pope Pius X with the children, and the angels with the children. During the construction of the chapel, the nuns wanted to include a window with the guardian angel, but they also wanted to include the children in the process of the chapel's construction. The nuns asked the children at St. Joseph's to help them decide what the guardian angel should be doing in the stained glass window. When asked, the children noted that they had very personal things to discuss with the guardian angel, and it was decided that there should be 2, one for the boys and one for the girls. St. Joseph's Orphanage was self-sufficient. In 1910, about 160 of the overall 720 acres were under cultivation. Another 90 acres were devoted to a fruit orchard. Bishop Morris was very interested in agriculture and often conducted agricultural experiments on the land surrounding the orphanage. Also, the U.S. government maintained an agricultural experiment station on the farm for many years. There was an old farmhouse to the west of the orphanage where the farmhands lived, and the barns for the horses, cattle, and hogs were kept. A house and incubator for chickens, turkeys, and ducks was located behind St. Joseph's. Eventually, the number of acres under cultivation increased to over 300. The children helped with every aspect of the building's operation. They helped with the livestock, they baled hay, and worked in the large garden that once existed to the northwest of the building. The original grounds around St. Joseph's were designed by architect James K. Parker. Parker was originally from Oxford, England, but spent time in California and Colorado. He became very distraught at the death of his wife of 47 years and sold everything he had and traveled until he ran out of money. In 1923, he ended up completely broke and in Little Rock, and decided to knock on the door of St. Andrew's Cathedral. They sent him then to St. Joseph's to live. While Mr. Parker lived here at St. Joseph's, he wanted to give back to the orphanage. So he landscaped the grounds, built rock walls, walkways, and the entrance arch. He also terraced the grounds. These terraces were removed in the late 1950s and early 1960s. In addition to learning their reading, writing, and arithmetic, the children at St. Joseph's Homes were taught practical skills. Girls learned how to sew, cook, and take care of small children, while boys learned about horticulture, farming, and animal husbandry. A room on the 3rd floor, counting the full basement as the 1st floor, served as the infirmary for the sick. Local doctors and dentists provide their services free of charge. If there was a medical emergency, the individual was taken to St. Vincent's Hospital in Little Rock. Throughout the years, St. Joseph's Home received financial support from the local diocese, Arkansas's Catholic congregations, the Knights of Columbus, many private donations, and secular groups like the Little Rock Board of Trade, the forerunner of the Little Rock Chamber of Commerce. In response to the U.S. entry into World War I, the U.S. government financed the construction of several military training posts throughout the country. In June of 1917, North Little Rock was awarded one of these camps, Camp Pike. Construction on the camp began immediately. and because of the camp's close proximity to St. Joseph's Home, Bishop Morris decided to temporarily relocate the children. He moved the children to the former St. John's Seminary buildings, which had been constructed in 1911 at the southeast corner of 25th, now Roosevelt Street, and State Streets in Little Rock. These buildings were recently left empty after the seminary had moved in 1916 to North Tyler Street in Pulaski Heights. Bishop Morris leased St. Joseph's Home and 320 acres to the Belmont Hotel Company. In August of 1917, Little Rock architect Frank Gibb was hired to retrofit the interior of the orphanage so that it could serve as a hotel, which was mainly reserved for Army officers and their families. Gibbs was also to design other structures on the property. The Missouri Pacific Railroad constructed a spur railroad track directly into Camp Pike, and it passed behind St. Joseph's Home. A passenger depot was constructed somewhere behind St. Joseph's so people could easily access the Hotel Belmont. Also, a large officers' club was constructed nearby for entertainment. The area also included a small store, shoe shop, and cleaning and pressing shop located near St. Joseph's to cater to military personnel as well. After the end of the war, the children and nuns returned to St. Joseph's Home in 1921. Because Bishop Morris had given a large part of the original 720-acre property to the military for Camp Pike, he purchased a farm near Prothero Junction in order to provide St. Joseph's with enough land to sustain itself. In 1925, St. Joseph's Home had 193 residents. By 1941, 106 children lived at St. Joseph's, and there was a long waiting list, due in large part to limited funding. Most of the children who came to St. Joseph's were not actually orphans. In many cases, their parents could not afford to care for them, or they were from broken homes. In the early 20th century, there was a great need for places like St. Joseph's Orphanage. In 1941, there were 5 orphanages in the Little Rock area. The Little Rock Orphans Home on McGowan Street, which would later become the Elizabeth Mitchell Memorial Home for Children, and was located in the Rogers House on 18th Street from 1960 to 1982, as well as St. Joseph's Home, the Methodist Children's Home on Elm Street, the Arkansas Children's Home on Wolf Street, which soon became the Arkansas Children's Hospital in 1954, and the Working Women's Home and Day Nursery on 21st Street. To illustrate the great need for orphanages and the differences in social norms, particularly those of gender roles, here is a quote from a December 28, 1941 article in the Arkansas Gazette entitled, "Homes for the Homeless." Few of the young inmates actually are orphans. Most of them are the victims of broken homes wherein one of the parents has been lost through death, divorce, desertion, or disease. The remaining parent, if a mother, is often unable to make a living for the family. If a father, he cannot cope with the double burden of providing a living for the children and caring for their physical needs. Most orphans never reach an institution because when deprived of their parents, they are eagerly received by relatives. The children cared for by our splendid institutions are frequently more unfortunate than orphans because they are the victims of tragedy and poverty. But their misfortune usually ends when the friendly doors open to receive them into the happy home life of that most misunderstood of all institutions, the modern orphanage." End quote. Another important point about St. Joseph's Orphanage, many children were not offered for adoption because they still had family in the area, and there was always the hope that the parents would eventually be able to reclaim them. Social trends and ideas about child welfare changed in the late 1960s and early 1970s. In Arkansas, Act 38 of 1971 initiated major government reorganization and created the immediate predecessor of the Arkansas Department of Human Services. The idea of an orphanage became outmoded and was abandoned in favor of foster families and adoption. The number of children entering St. Joseph's decreased dramatically, but at the same time, more women entered the workforce and needed daycare for their children. So in 1978, St. Joseph's Home became a daycare and kindergarten. St. Joseph's Home was listed on the National Register of Historic Places in 1976. In 1997, most of the Benedictine sisters returned to their monasteries, but 2 sisters remained at St. Joseph's until December of 2007. In 2010, the Catholic Diocese signed a 50-year lease with the St. Joseph Center of Arkansas Incorporated, a nonprofit organization dedicated to the preservation and adaptive reuse of this century-old landmark. The St. Joseph Center of Arkansas has added new areas to the grounds surrounding the building, including a demonstration garden, pollinator garden, an apiary, and an area of community gardens. The center does hire farmers to help with the gardens, but much of the work across the grounds and building has been accomplished by volunteers. They have also added new animal areas to the grounds, including turning the old wood shop into a goat barn. The center continues to run their popular farm stand with offers of low produce from local farmers, as well as their own gardens. They have also renovated sections of the interior of the building to serve as rental artist studios and areas to host overnight visitors for workshops and retreats. The building once included large porches to the east and west that were rebuilt about 1980. However, these were removed due to their deteriorating nature in the early 2010s. The center's most recent renovation project has been the classroom space at the west end of the building, which has recently been transformed into an open gallery space. The St. Joseph Center of Arkansas continues to work on the interior of the building, room by room, in hopes of opening up more of the structure to new uses. They are also working to preserve and archive the files and artifacts that have been donated to the center. These files include information on the children housed at the orphanage. Although the center does help to find information for people with direct family connections to the students who lived at St. Joseph's, due to the personal nature of their collection, their historic files are not currently available to the general public. Thank you for joining us for our virtual tour of St. Joseph's Home, or St. Joseph's Orphanage, in North Little Rock. For more information on properties listed in the National Register of Historic Places in Arkansas, please check out our website at arkansaspreservation.com. Also, if you would like to see videos of our previous tours, check out our YouTube channel and also our Facebook page. Please join us for our next virtual Sandwiching and History tour, which will feature the Old State House in downtown Little Rock.